Good morning, everyone, and welcome to NYU Stern's 5th Annual FinTech Conference. I'm Kathleen DeRose, the Director of the Fubon Center for Technology, Business, and Innovation, and one of the architects of our FinTech programs. I'd like to thank the university, the Fubon Center's founding donor and alum, Richard Tsai, and all our conference speakers and participants for making this exciting day possible. Today's theme, Autonomous Finance, Facts and Fakes, gathers academics and practitioners to address FinTech in an era of exponentially accelerating AI automation. Let's set the stage. Why does artificial intelligence have particular significance for finance? There are 5 big themes. First, there's a step function advance in the automation frontier as tools like ChatGPT and domain-specific AI applications evolve at rates faster than bacteria, but with no environmental resource constraints. This is scientific Promethean fire. What does it mean for FinTech? Second, we're in a full-blown hype cycle that has exploded the way we think about everyday activities, from art, jobs, love, politics, religion, and work. By the way, DALL-E 2 made all the art for this conference. As described in a recent New York Times article detailing many use cases as AI integrates, from compiling PhD research, making decisions for folding proteins, and doing mundane tasks like weekly menus and bookkeeping, what are the opportunities in FinTech domains? Third, AI is intensifying and reordering competition on 3 levels: between big tech competitors, Google, Microsoft, and newly launched entrants, and established finance companies, between sovereign states locked in a geopolitical arms race, and ultimately between humans and AI. What does this mean for FinTech competition? Fourth, AI raises existential questions. As recent authors from the Center for Humane Technology said, bringing both bedazzling gifts, but also potentially hacking the foundations of our civilization. Are we facing a utopian future of no work and all play, or a dystopian one where we work for our robot overlords? Early AI researchers warned of the risks of emergent behavior decades ago. What about FinTech work? Fifth, AI raises big policy challenges. Despite recent public lamentations, the AI industry is not fully self-policing. It's just too shiny an object. And ethics teams are quitting or getting fired. Governments are taking opposing approaches to AI. Recent revisions to China's digital AI law treat AI as a state asset and propose comprehensive oversight of so-called digital government and digital culture to drive national ambitions. The Biden administration's blueprint for an AI Bill of Rights, concerned with preserving democratic values in civil society, is well-intentioned, but ultimately toothless if we've truly summoned the demon, as some suggest. What about FinTech regulation in the era of AI? So AI has special relevance for finance and for FinTech. Financial systems are complex, dynamic ones, both resilient and fragile, built on trust, but subject to booms and busts. Markets rely on the free flow of information. Financial institutions and intermediaries are focal points of money, data, and systemic risk. They're a rich target for bad actors. Tech automation has not stopped and may even magnify bubbles and crashes. A recent paper by 2 Fed researchers, Hansen and Kaznick, found that ChatGPT can decipher Fed speak, can classify the Fed policy stance from the FOMC meeting minutes better than any human and better than all previous text-based classification models. Is it a short step from an AI deciphering Fed policy to distorting it? Financial products are the ultimate digital good, and finance and FinTech are already sophisticated data miners and automators, from high-frequency trading to peer-to-peer lending platforms, where AI is now pick and pack loans. What about a smart AI with unknown incentives designing products and services for your financial future? Financial agents make decisions under uncertainty. Video finfluencers on YouTube and TikTok and smart apps using behavioral finance already shape choices and behavior. This is a tremendous chance for financial inclusion. But they can also initiate gamified addiction and ignite self-reinforcing feedback loops, as we've seen in crypto collapses, meme stock episodes, and Twitter-fired bank runs. A recent paper by Lopez, Lira, and Tang found that ChatGPT outperforms all other commercial sentiment analyzers when predicting equity prices. What about a deepfake video, gathering followers and polarizing equity buyers and sellers? You will hear about all these topics today and more as you listen and participate with our expert speakers who sit at the very forefront of AI innovation in finance. Before we begin, a quick note on logistics. Stay on this link throughout the conference. We take a short break at 11:05 for some virtual networking, where you can meet your peers and debate today's topics. You can join these or just take a break and come back. You'll return at 11:50 to the same Zoom link for more great speakers and panels. It's now my huge pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Frances Haugen. A talented technologist with a stellar career at a series of tech giants, Frances gained prominence for her bravery in raising alarm bells about Facebook, now Meta's, approach to disinformation and hate speech. She has a lot to say about this topic. Frances?
Good morning. My name is Frances Haugen, and I was a data scientist behind the scenes for the vast majority of my career. In the fall of 2021, I stepped into kind of a new role or new phase of my life, I guess you could say, when I came out as the person responsible for the 22,000 pages of documents that altogether came out as the Facebook files. The reason I'm here to talk to you today is since then, my work has moved on to working with what we call opaque systems. I have a book coming out this June that asks a really basic question. Facebook went to extensive lengths to hire kind, compassionate, empathetic, smart people. People who, if you had asked them, would you want to destabilize a country in Africa? Would you want to change political speech? Would you want to, shape people's ability to trust their information environment in negative ways? None of the employees at Facebook would have ever said that was their intention. And yet, the 22,000 pages of documents I brought out detailed how internal governance issues and the ability of Facebook to act in ways that were completely unaccountable to the public for years and years and years, slowly over time, led the company to a place that I think they themselves have trouble recognizing. So why am I here today? We are entering into a very, very interesting phase of technology. I am maybe a little harsher of a critic on our new phase of AI than, say, we mentioned Center for Humane Technology. Their position is we need to pause for 6 months because we've invented this technology that could potentially be an existential threat. The thing that I think most people don't recognize is that AI has already escaped. There have been events like Facebook publishing their large language model, which lower the activation energy for someone to access the space by like $100 million. By just giving people the initial weights to bootstrap off of, they didn't have to run a giant corpus of data through the system for months and months. They got to start from a much higher playing field. Part of why I can say this authoritatively is, my husband is a programmer, and literally over the course of the last few weeks, he now has a phone that in a pretty functional way, he literally can say to the phone, hey, do XYZ for me on the internet. And using large language models and some of the new plugins that exist, it goes out there and navigates tasks on the internet. He's one person working by himself. He has a couple of other people who are doing little things from they hired off the internet. That's crazy. If one person can do that, imagine a state actor. AI has escaped. So that leaves us to an interesting question, which is, if AI has escaped, what can be done? Some of those existential risks, I think they've run away from us, right? If they are to come true, and I certainly hope they don't, because independent state actors can spin up a data center and begin developing technology that is outside of any of the bounds that we talk about, I think it's very unlikely for us to go to a world where we do have zero tolerance policies. I don't think any of us wants to live in a world where we call in drone strikes on data centers because we think they're running too many GPU chips, right? Or live in a world where we ration out those GPU chips because we think that's going to do something. When in fact, you can train these AI models on CPUs. That's the kind of thing that's running in all of our laptops. It's just a little bit more expensive, maybe a factor of 3 or 4. So what do we do then? So it's escaped. There's still lots of opportunities for us to shape what is the governance environment that these technologies operate within. My contention on Facebook is that Facebook had a very unique opportunity in terms of its existence and how it operated in the world from just a corporate perspective. When I came out, people asked me, was it worth it? And I think the thing they were really asking was, how did the world change when you came out? When Ralph Nader testified before Congress, and I think a lot of people, when they looked at me, they felt like there was a great analog there. Ralph Nader published the book Unsafe at Any Speed in 1965 because, cars were in a very similar situation. The automotive industry knew very basic things to make people safer, and they chose not to do it because they were afraid of drawing attention to the idea that their cars were unsafe. And there was a kind of a first mover disadvantage. The people feared that if they were the first ones to talk about safety, people would question, why are your cars unsafe? When I came out, the environment that Ralph Nader was operating in versus what I was operating in were worlds apart. Because Facebook was able to hide all their data, to make all their decisions behind a curtain, to leave us just looking at our screens, we ended up in a situation where, when Ralph Nader came out, there were at least 100,000 automotive engineers who could say, yes, the things that Ralph Nader just said are true. When I came out, there were maybe a few hundred people in the world who really thoroughly understood how the algorithms work in these companies, and that the solutions that I talked about from the documents were good options. We're about to enter a very similar phase. The reason why there could be 100,000 automotive engineers is because people could buy those cars and take them apart. People could buy those cars and crash them. We had so many automotive engineers that we'd had professional organizations for 65 years. You could get a graduate degree in automotive safety for 20 or 30 years before I came out. In the case of things like generative AI, I think we're going to see a parallel to what we saw with Facebook. That with generative AI, each of these applications, these spaces that we're going to bring AI into, yes, the general tools are things that people can access. People can all develop independently. But none of us for these individual applications gets to see behind the curtain. And I want to take a moment and talk about kind of what those consequences are. So we're going to be in a situation just like with Facebook, where an automotive company can go and hire employees that have worked through curricula that give them a rounding of issues that they need to be concerned about. They can look at past cars and say, hey, this worked, this didn't work. When someone tried this before, it was a really bad idea. When they did this, it was a really good idea. With things like with Facebook's AI systems, you could say it was the first generation of us really playing with fire, right? Facebook had to train all of their employees in-house. They couldn't go and just hire someone who had already had the background they needed. As we move into this new generative AI space, we're going to see a repeat of that again, because I guarantee you, no one in the financial sphere is going to publish their models unless we begin establishing a norm that we do this and pushing to have fair regulations that require a similar level of transparency from all actors. Like mentioned in the introduction, one of the things that we're going to see as we open up these new generative AIs is that they are accelerants, right? The issue in our information system, with regard to things like Facebook, was that you could have ideas that like a core part of my disclosure was the idea that Facebook changed how their algorithms worked from just trying to keep you on their site as long as possible to trying to get you to interact as much as possible, right? So the world changed. And what happened when they made that little algorithmic shift in 2018, they did it for business reasons, right? They found that when people got more likes, comments, reshares, they in turn produced more content that Facebook could use to run their system. But they also found out within 6 months that the content that provokes you to react the most isn't necessarily the content you enjoy the most, or is a representative sample of the content that is available in the system. They had political parties coming to them on the left and the right across Europe saying, we know you changed the algorithm because we're seeing the shift in content. It used to be we could share something that was, relatively bland, like a white paper on our agricultural policy. And, we get it. It wasn't the most interesting. But we know from the statistics, people spent time with it. They read it. Now the things that are getting the most distribution are some of the things that appeal to anger, to make people fearful, that make people be disgusted with the other, right? Extreme content is now winning. That agricultural policy, it's just crickets. Facebook's ability to act in the dark meant that a shift this large could go on for years before anyone knew about it, before they had to face consequences. As we begin to apply these ever more powerful tools to the financial space, how long will we be able, like, if things begin to shift, if things begin to go wrong, if we begin to see things like, the markets swing much more dramatically, how long will the public tolerate this kind of behavior before they step in? And so the thing I want to leave you with today is a little bit of a discussion around, let's imagine a different world that Facebook could have followed. So what happened to Facebook because they acted in the dark? One of the core contentions in my book that's coming out is, when you look at tech companies, Facebook has whistleblowers every couple of weeks. Like I always kind of bristle when people call me the Facebook whistleblower, because there's so many Facebook whistleblowers. For every Apple whistleblower, I bet there's 10 or 50 Facebook whistleblowers. It's like, why is that? And I think a big part of it is that Apple knows that if they lie, they're going to get caught. People take apart those phones within hours of when a new iPhone comes out and put out YouTube videos saying, hey, this is actually what's in the phone. Let's walk through together. Like, what parts are in here? Does it actually meet the benchmarks that Apple claims it does? And organizationally, a culture in which you will get caught if you lie is also a culture that has space to tell the truth. Inside of Facebook, because they were working behind a curtain, and because Facebook was freed of most of our traditional mechanisms of corporate governance. Remember, Mark Zuckerberg owns over 50% of all the voting shares. Because they do so many stock buybacks, each quarter he owns more and more of the company in terms of votes. Because inside of Facebook, the only thing that was accountable was, what does Mark want? What makes Mark happy? Not what is best for the company, what is true, what is best for society over the long run. You ended up getting an environment where it was very, very toxic to be critical, or it had no space for criticality. That as I'd walk around, it felt kind of like I was in a country club, that you were never allowed to draw attention to any of the kind of darker corners. That you had to be a very, very positive team player, or people would notice and they'd kind of put you in the corner. The problem with that is that people don't like to lie. The reason why there are so many Facebook whistleblowers is because people internally feel like they don't have an ability to be able to get that alignment between what reality is like and what the company is doing, or what the company is saying externally. And there's a second cost to that, which is that over the years, what Facebook has had to pay employees has wildly diverged. In 2022, after I'd come out, I had a friend who did the classic Silicon Valley thing. He interviewed at a bunch of different companies all in 2 weeks. You take vacation so you can get these interviews in all at the same time. So you get a number of simultaneous competing offers. This is how you get the largest pay package, right? And in the end, he went to Facebook because Facebook paid 30% more than any of the other offers he got. When we have cultures that are based on opacity, they have a tendency to evolve with time to being misaligned with reality. We need that feedback loop. And unfortunately, that has the cost of meaning it's harder to hire the highest quality employees. It's harder to get your employees to give it at all. I think we're going to see a larger and larger phenomena over the years of that Gen Z doesn't like to live inauthentically. And so as we begin to talk about this idea of where are we going next in terms of automation, generative AI, FinTech, we need to be asking questions around what kinds of companies do we want to run? We're in the free-for-all phase. It is a gold rush. There is a huge economic incentive to throw caution to the wind because the total potential prize is so vast. But we also need to be aware that the choices we make today are going to radically shape the companies we build the employees we're going to be able to hire in the long run, or even in the kind of midterm. And that we should be having conversations now about what standards do we want to have across these companies proactively. Because the secondary reason why we need to be remembering there is costs to secrecy, costs to being behind the curtain, is that we sometimes forget as technologists that we exist in a larger society, and we exist because of the consent of that larger society. In a world where people are beginning to become very scared, very apprehensive about AI, right? You have editorials where people are saying, hey, we need such a moratorium that we're calling in drone strikes on data centers, right? Like that's the level of public discourse right now. That was literally the editorial in Time magazine. If we don't build as if the opinion of the public matters, there will be a moment when we face backlash. As people begin to look at this and say, am I going to be displaced? They're also going to be more willing to say, hey, I don't care if there's this huge benefit for whoever built this technology. You know, I feel scared that I don't see how these things work. I don't feel like we have a sense of control. And we have a long history in the United States or in other democracies of you can run out ahead and act independently for a long time, but at some point accountability does come. And so the main concept I want to leave you with as we end is, you know, we are in a moment where we get to choose, do we want to operate in a transparent way or do we want to operate in an opaque way? What we saw from Facebook was that very kind, conscientious people were able to go wildly off track when all outside regulation was removed, outside accountability was removed. And we are about to move into another era where unless we begin to have conversations about where is the floor, you know, what are the standards around how we operate with the public, we're going to see a repeat of that again. And in the end, I think there's a huge benefit to companies of operating in transparent ways. Your employees can give it their all. They can feel proud of what they do. You can attract the best talent. You can get the best talent because you cooperate with academia. You now have a pipeline of talent. And so we have choices. We don't have any specific path we have to take. And I hope as you guys go forward in the rest of your conversations today, you think about like, what world do we want to live in with regard to our companies and ourselves? So thank you so much. And it was lovely joining you guys today.
Frances, thank you so much. You've made such great points about analogies between the Facebook story. I love the Ralph Nader comparison. You've illustrated how difficult it is to find alignment. And, you know, every such moment needs a hero in that town square. So thank you for being the hero. I really appreciate it. And great to hear from you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a good day.